goes the devil, creeping in my life's design. So where does it get you, being such a damn nice guy? I've been trying.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 733 with a review of Renfield. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we already recorded a review of a little film called How to Blow Up a Pipeline, so hopefully you enjoyed that discussion for that. And now we're talking about Renfield, a little, comedic action take on the classic Dracula story. As we're jumping into this, Stephen, from time to time, we like to tell some fun little anecdotes about our experience in the theater or, little things that we noticed. I have a little tale to tell you about. As this movie was getting ready to get started, two very, very old folk came in, like an older couple came in and started making their way in the theater. And I was like, I'm sure they recognized the name Renfield from the classic tales of Dracula.
They probably knew him.
Yeah. they might have. With the speed at which they were walking, I definitely assumed they might be up there in ages with Dracula. But I was like, oh man, do they know what they are getting into? And after one of the, I'll say more intense action scenes with like a bunch of CG blood that was flying all over the place, I see the two of them get up and start making their way down the stairs to the theater. And I was like, they lasted longer than I thought. Then they got to a few rows below and just sat down there.
I was going to make a joke about that. They just wanted to sit up front.
They were either trying to escape people in their row or just wanted a better vantage point, because they just moseyed their way down to the front of the theater and then sat there. And I was like, all right, I guess you're enjoying it.
Like,
maybe you knew exactly
what is everybody laughing at? I got to get closer to the screen. I didn't bring my monocle.
Yeah. But it was, or maybe they were just biting people on the way down.
Yeah.
Everybody who was in the aisle seat there was like, nah, innocent victims.
I like it. See, you don't like you see people who you don't think would enjoy a movie like this, and then they surprise you. They wind up being the biggest fans of Renfield, and good for them.
Yeah. I mean, I was happy for them. It was. I was like, you know what, you're cool.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, because I knew Renfield was in like classic Dracula lore, but other than the fact that he was there and was kind of the Igor to Dracula's Frankenstein, I didn't really know anything else about it. Does this movie describe who he is at all? Because I read the Wikipedia plot description of this movie, and it opens with saying, like, after Dracula kills Renfield and then is himself killed by Van Helsing, he reforms himself and resurrects Renfield to continue serving as his assistant. Like, I don't remember any of that being in the movie. I don't remember the movie telling that part.
I think it's mostly just maybe it was a little bit in the recaps, but it might have also just been inserting that as historical stuff. And it also might be slightly cut from whatever the final version came out to be. I don't know. But to be completely honest, I am not 100% familiar with any of the lore behind Dracula other than he's Doctor Who sucks blood, according to Mitch Hedberg.
Yep.
Dr. Acula.
Named after Vlad the Impaler. I know that much.
But yeah, it's I haven't really followed all the lore. I have seen many a film that try to play with the lore. But I wasn't really familiar with it other than absorbing that like Renfield was the name of this person who becomes this familiar or whatever.
Did you see that trailer that they played, at least at Alamo, they played before this, a trailer for Last Voyage of the Demeter, and it's another Dracula movie on a boat that's coming out? It looked pretty cool.
I'm a fan of one location films, and I think a boat on the high seas with Dracula attacking people at night counts as one location, and I'm kind of stoked for that film.
Yeah, I am sure there are movies, including probably extremely classic ones like Nosferatu, that people are going to make fun of me for not knowing, but like, I don't know if I have seen a modern depiction of a vampire where they are actually that like demonic kind of creature that is in that trailer, rather than just being like a well-dressed man with slick back hair, and I kind of like the more realistic Dracula.
More realistic.
Even though it's going to give me nightmares.
You know, speaking of Dracula being realistic, I think we'll get into this in the context of the film as we start talking about it, but it blew my mind how often when somebody, when Hoult would be like, okay, I work for Dracula, or people would encounter Dracula, the crazy thing to them was that this was the Dracula, not that vampires exist. Never once did anybody question the existence of vampires. They were just like, no, we got the real Dracula. Yeah. It was that sort of gave me a chuckle all the time.
Definitely. Yeah, it was the one unrealistic thing in this movie. It kind of took me out of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I eat bugs all the time, and they don't give me shit. All right, Steven, should we get into this film?
Let's do it.
All right, we're going to take a listen to the trailer for Renfield and then come back and give everybody a review.
Mr. Renfield, welcome. I am Dracula. You will make a very good assistant.
No, he's evil. We will protect you.
You have the word of the most trusted institution on earth, the Catholic Church. Renfield, your sole purpose in life is to serve me. Now, let's eat.
I just want a normal life again.
God bless you, Mr. Renfield.
Oh, God bless you, nuns.
You're a hero. Robert Montague Renfield. Let me explain. I work for Dracula.
Count Dracula?
It's the real Dracula!
Some call me the Dark One. Others, the Lord of Death.
So you bring him people to eat?
Well, I do other stuff.
Like what? Wash his cape?
No, the cape is dry clean only, strictly.
Yeah, I will wear this fly, yeah.
I don't think he's such a bad guy. But you're never really going to be free until you face him.
I will no longer tolerate abuse. I deserve happiness.
Let me explain something to you, okay? You deserve only suffering. I will unleash an army of death. Everyone you care about will suffer because you betrayed me.
We have to stop him before sunset.
I am enough. I deserve happiness, and I take full charge of my life tonight.
You know when something crazy happens and someone's like, it's okay, I've seen way worse. Everything I saw you do today is going to be my way worse.
It's my least favorite part of the job.
All right, so that was the trailer for Renfield. Basically, Dracula has lost a little bit of his power, and his familiar Renfield brings him to a modern-day city to try to get victims enough to regain his full strength. But over the course of the film, maybe young, not quite young, but maybe old Renfield begins to maybe develop a backbone that might let him stand up to the great and powerful Dracula. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Renfield?
So in our last episode, I mentioned that I texted you saying I made a last-minute decision to watch How to Blow Up a Pipeline. The reason I made that decision is because I thought, damn it, I want to enjoy one movie this weekend.
Oh, no.
This is definitely not the best movie I've seen where Nicholas Hoult plays a supernatural monster who ultimately has a heart for good that we wind up rooting for. That would be Warm Bodies. This movie, my take is that, but for one giant caveat, which I will get to, this movie is Cocaine Bear to me. This is a movie that had a really funny premise, and it was so sure that the humor of the trailer would sustain it that it forgot to make a movie. That was how it felt to me. Like all of it to me is captured by the crime syndicate in this movie. There are cop stuff with Awkwafina and her sister. There's a crime syndicate led by Ben Schwartz. I like both of those actors. I've seen them be very, very funny and entertaining in many things. I feel like the movie didn't care enough to even give us half an explanation of what either of them stood for. Like, every time they were on screen, it was just the most, like, perfunctory, have you ever seen a movie? This is one of those things that it was like, it wasn't satirizing movies. It was just, like, bad at it. Like, there are multiple conversations that Awkwafina has with her FBI sister that I was like, is a joke about to happen to justify why this dialogue is so terrible? And then a joke wouldn't occur. Renfield, he is funny, right? Like, we've seen him in the trailer when he eats bugs and then suddenly is violently fighting people. That's fun the first time. It's fun to see him do that the first time. I had fun when he's fighting in, like, the bar early on, and we get to see the full-length version of the trailer action. But otherwise, like, his character, his redemption arc is, like, so obvious and telegraphed, and I didn't feel like there was any fun camaraderie between him and Awkwafina. I didn't think there was any fun villainry, and, like, by the time the movie they'd set up, like, okay, here's what the movie is going to do, this is what's happening, they already brought me my receipt for my lunch at Alamo, because this is not a movie. This is not interested in being a movie. This is just like a variety show sketch that is bloated into feature length, but, like, doesn't really have any of the movie beats. My big caveat in this movie is that Nicolas Cage is hilarious as Dracula. I love his hammy ridiculousness, along with Nicholas Hoult's hammy ridiculousness. I think they both do very well at being these characters, and I wish someone had made an actual movie with, like, an actual plot, something to root for, something to enjoy, that leveraged the comedic supernatural horror thing that both of them were in. But instead they plopped them in this, like, shitty B- whatever, crew takes down the big bad people who own everyone in New Orleans. It just felt like a TV movie to me. Like, there was something that I just was not laughing, and so many of the jokes were telegraphed in advance. I'm not gonna spoil it, but all I'm gonna say is there's a joke about powder, and the moment I even thought about it, I was like, oh, I know how the movie's going to end now. I hope they do something more funny about this. And then they don't do anything more funny. They just do exactly what you think they're going to do the whole way through.
And then they comment on it.
Exactly.
Explaining the not joke.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case you didn't get it already. And yeah, this movie is Cocaine Bear down to its use of cocaine. I don't know. It just did not. Its saving grace is that Nick Cage and Nick Hoult are both really entertaining as performers, and their silliness makes it be, like, almost worth it to me. But I was so prepared to have a lot of fun, and I just, like, did not have a lot of fun watching this movie, and that disconnect just bummed me out. I hope you liked it.
I won't try to defend this film. Other than to say that I don't think they forgot to make a movie. I think they just made a very by the numbers movie. I think that if this was if this was a television series on a B tier streaming platform, it would be totally fine. I think that it doesn't quite have the standing legs to be like a draw to the theater for you to see it. I didn't laugh out loud. I kind of enjoyed it a tiny bit. Like,
ooh,
I
how
think
delightful.
like to me, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, I don't know the best way to articulate it, but it's like, its premise is clever enough that when it's just doing the premise, you're like, I don't hate this. but it's not like, I don't have all, like, in my head now, like, part of the reason why I could immediately go to another movie and just go see it is because I wasn't, like, riding a high off of how much fun I had with this film, right? It was mostly a thing where I was like, oh yeah, I like the idea of it. I like the way it plays with the things. I think, though the action is maybe cut a little too much, I think the stuff they were trying to choreograph is actually kind of interesting. There were like some kind of gnarly kills that don't get enough like there were times when like a table gets kicked into somebody, but I'm pretty sure they're impaled by one of the legs of the table when it hits them, but you don't really get the shot that shows that actually happening. So it's kind of like but there's fun action in this film, and I kind of enjoyed the way it played around with that stuff. You know, the jokes aren't that crazy. I actually like Ben Schwartz in this film.
Man, I don't blame him. I just think he gets nothing to do in the movie, and like they can't decide if he's going to be just a super goofy comedic villain or if he's going to be like have to be weirdly earnest in his antagonism of the main character, and it just, I don't know. It didn't work for me. But
it's like he's a whiny little bitch, right? He is the kid from the first John Wick, right? Like, yeah. He is that character, but then at some point when fucking Baba Yaga's coming for you, he gets to get turned into Dracula's familiar, and he's like, now I'm the boogeyman, right? Like, I like the way he plays with that, and like those kind of interactions seem kind of fun, right? If this was, like I said, if this was like a B tier streaming platform thing, like moments like, you know, seeing potentially a bunch of other familiars suddenly are things where it's like when you're watching that like low rent streaming platform, you'd be like, oh yeah, that moment was pretty cool. But it's kind of like the idea of it is cooler than the execution, but it's like it's doing it enough that you're just like kind of like watching it and being like I do feel a little bit like I did walking out of Cocaine Bear, but I thought Cocaine Bear was stupider. It's just as not laugh out loud funny as this film is, but this film is at least ideas, right? They're not always the best idea, and the jokes aren't always the best jokes, but it's like Cocaine Bear oversold itself on how, like, it was like, yes, we don't have a whole complete thought here, and that's why it's good. This film is like, we got a whole thought, and it's a whole thought. And you either are like, yeah, that was a whole thought. Nice. It's kind of like, you know, sometimes I just want a little quesadilla, right? I would prefer to have like a California burrito, but a quesadilla is nice too.
I'm glad you got a quesadilla. To me, I don't really disagree with anything that you're saying, because you didn't really disagree with anything I was saying. I will say the action setup is good. The version of the action I can see in my head is pretty cool, and I know exactly what it is. It's Kingsman: The Secret Service is the like well done version of the action that I can see in my head. Yeah. The movie doesn't make good on that. Like, they cut around it because they don't actually have the goods to show for it, and they're hoping that you are going to fill in other good action movies and be like, hell yeah, I'm going to pretend I'm watching one of those right now. Like the scene where maybe there are multiple familiars. I mean, it doesn't help. I also thought about John Wick while I was watching this movie, because I thought about, once you have defined how strong a character is, like, let's say when they are, you know, storming a hotel and it takes you forever to kill one or two of them because of the armor that they're wearing, and then suddenly you flood it with 10 more, how incredibly hard that is to overcome, right? Like, this movie, in that moment, I was like, oh shit, it's gonna happen. Wow, we're gonna get a really big action set piece right now. And we definitely don't. And I know that it's a comedy movie, and so we can cop out of the action, but it's just like, I feel like by the time that happens, and that should be like the epic big fight that's going on, the movie is going to be over in like 7 minutes. Like, there just isn't a lot going on here. Yeah. And at some point I felt like, because the premise is good, the rest of the movie just had to be like pretty okay for me to like it. And I feel like the rest of the movie was like just actively shitting the bed on what the premise was giving it, and that that bummed me out. Like, one thing, there are a bunch of things that I feel like are supposed to be paid off as jokes that they just like cut or didn't get around to filming. Like Ben Schwartz's mom in the movie is the kind of, the leader of the gang, the person who rules the city. And her behavior is very strange in a way that seemed like she was also going to be a horror movie creature or something like that. Like, she was like inhuman and cartoony and campy. And then the movie is just like, no, actually, we're not going to do anything with her. We're actually never going to see her again. It's no big deal. Like, we're not like, I don't know. There's just something weird about the way this movie used its side characters that I didn't understand.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to do some heavy lifting for this film to try to justify it while still trying to remain semi ambiguous to not spoil this, outstanding movie, I'll say that when you see his mother, there is an expectation of like we know Dracula as a like seducer, right? That's like part of the character of like the ability to like have power over the will of both men and women, but like specifically the sexualized nature of who Dracula is and his ability to seduce people. And then his mother is like this powerful woman syndicate runner who you think is going to, potentially bond with Dracula without needing to be bitten, right? Like she just would be natural queen to his kingdom, right? Because she even there's even that line where she's like, Prince Dracula.
Yeah.
Like you assume like, all right, so we know where this is going. And the film is going to try to flip that on its head, maybe potentially a little bit by having Dracula's interests lie elsewhere. And it's sort of like, I feel like they thought they were being super clever, and that's kind of why it diverged a little bit. But that's just an assumption on my part.
Yeah, she was just so over the top and campy. I thought she was like Bride of Frankenstein or so. Like I thought she was going to be another Universal horror creature almost, because she like nothing about her when you meet her seems like, oh, this is actually the woman in charge of the gang that runs New Orleans. Like you see her and she seems like a otherworldly comedy camp character. Like I don't know, there was just something off about it. Again, I don't know if there were jokes that were cut in the edit room or whatever, but there was just something that was like, okay, don't know what you were doing there, but don't know what you were doing with anything. Honestly, about this movie, it's very, very, very paid by numbers. Like you've seen a cop movie, this is one of those. But by the way, pay attention over here to the fun characters. But then we're gonna give way too much screen time to the cop stuff and Awkwafina and her family and her backstory and everything, and it's just like it's not working. I'm sorry, like that stuff doesn't work at all.
Yeah, I did almost chuckle a few times at the constant "fuck you, Kevin" or whatever that character's name was. That was that was a good running bit.
Yeah, it was fine.
I do generally like the thing that isn't a post-credit stinger, but is clearly shot as a post-credit stinger. That has to do with maybe remnants of undead things. Not undead. What is Dracula? Undead is zombies, right?
I think
living
he's
dead. Living dead.
Living dead. Yeah, you're right. Living dead.
So it's hard to keep all the terminology straight.
Yeah, like I wish I had more to say about it. I hope you have more things that you enjoyed about it, because this movie just passed right through me. Like I cannot stress, this was not, I don't think, Alamo being weird and delivering the receipt early. It was just like the movie had just started and it was like, oh, here you go. I was like, what? What?
Did you?
We haven't even had like a second act yet.
Is that how you felt about How to Blow Up a Pipeline? You're like, what? You can't bring in the receipt. They haven't blown up this pipeline yet.
Like, that's the thing. That is a shorter movie, I believe. I haven't actually looked at the comparative runtimes, but it felt like a complete arc. Like it felt like a complete movie to me.
Yeah.
This one just didn't. This felt like one of those like direct-to-video movies that like the Reno 911 guys would have made or something. Like it just like something just didn't feel real about this movie.
That's what I'm saying. Is if this is a streaming show, you would be like, oh yeah, that was kind of fun. Like it would be. Oh
yeah, totally.
Its throwaway nature is not a detriment to. I binged the 4 episodes of this on Netflix because I heard some people laughed. Like
Yo, yeah. See, I don't think I would binge 4 episodes of this. If this was like a show where every episode was a different riff on some kind of like famous horror thing transported to daily life, I would think maybe this movie would have enough content for like a 30-minute episode of one of those.
Yeah.
And then I would be like, good on you, movie. Wow, you did a lot with your little budget. That's fine. That's fine. Good on you, show. I wonder what you're going to do next. Let's see.
Yeah.
I could watch this the way I would watch The Premise, where I'm like, okay, you had a good idea. 30% of it was kind of shitty, but, the kernel of a good idea was still good. Let me hit next. Let me see what your next idea was, right?
Yeah.
But this is a whole-ass movie, and I just don't give it the same grace.
Yeah. No, we're basically saying the same thing, and I totally get that comparison to The Premise, because The Premise is like a thing where it's like, you're like, oh, this premise is great, and I know exactly where this is going, but like it didn't need to be a full X amount of minutes depending on the episode, but it's a good enough idea that it is fun enough to be like, oh yeah, that was clever.
Yeah.
But yeah, the butt plug episode is great.
Yep.
Like that one's generally like that's the one episode you need the entire runtime to make the payoff of it as good. The other ones, the payoff has already happened, and the premise is just the entire idea. That one is like,
with a butt plug, you have to ease into it.
Yeah, otherwise you might get your consciousness transferred from neighboring multiverse realities.
I would actually argue the best episode was the moment of silence about the father of a victim, but we can talk about it offline.
Yeah,
anyway. Yeah. That is how damning I am at this movie, is I think the premise is better than this movie, and I don't think BJ Novak makes very good things for the most part.
Damn, harsh.
Yeah, I said it.
All right. Well, Stephen, should we find out how like the premise this is?
Sure.
Let's go ahead and get to our verdicts then. If you're going to give this a must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for until past the caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
Everything in me wants to call it must-avoid, but I have to go past with a caveat, only because the caveat is I think the two Nikolai at the center are actually really good and doing like a really good job with this very silly material. And it is a testament to Nicolas Cage being Nicolas Cage, but then Nicholas Hoult also is like rapidly becoming one of my kind of favorite low-key actors to watch, just because he can be these kind of weaselly, sniveling people who surprise you, and he's really good at doing that. And I think there is something to recommend it just for like, good on you, you pulled it off. But yeah, the movie is not good. The movie's garbage.
I'm just going to be consistent with my reviews in this recording session. I'm just going to give this a wait for rental. I did not hate my time with it. Nothing Steven has said is false. It's not a particularly good film. I just didn't hate it, and I think that it would be much more forgivable as like a television show or an episode of a television show where you can kind of just like, you're kind of not expecting much, you're just sort of tuning in. But like seeing it as like a film on the big screen where heartbreak feels good in a place like this, you kind of expect a little more, and this film didn't quite deliver on those goods. But I think if I had to rewatch this or rewatch Cocaine Bear, I would pick this.
I agree. I would too. Then again, if I could watch Cocaine Bear without that audience, maybe I would feel differently. So,
or if you could watch Cocaine Bear in the minds, like as the audience, that audience, then maybe you would like
watch Nicolas Cage Dracula fight the Cocaine Bear. I think that would sustain me for like at least 25 minutes.
Which is quite a coincidence, because the latest season of The Premise is here, and The Premise is what if Cocaine Bear fought Dracula.
I mean, it's like one of those celebrity death match or whatever.
Yeah.
Things.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this weekend. Stephen Miller, people want to find you throughout the week. Where can they do that?
People can find me at twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at Twitter.com/SpoilerWarning, Facebook.com/TheSpoilerWarning, or Instagram.com/TheSpoilerWarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that. And yeah, that's it. We will be back next week with a review of something else. So see you then, and don't I don't know.
Stay safe out there. But if you don't, it doesn't matter, because apparently we can also resurrect you.
Yep. I feel like that was new.
Yes.
All right. Later, everybody.
Bye.
In my mid-20s now, I need more money